But now, I think we ought to ask the question, is this true? Is experience something that happens to us, that we have? Or would it be more accurate to say that there is simply a process of experiencing? Again, the Buddhist philosophers of ancient India had realized something which we can perhaps see even more clearly as a result of our own scientific investigations of just what perception is in terms of our own nervous system. And it's rather simple to talk about this whole problem, shall we say, in terms of neurology. And this is not to say that our consciousness, our minds, are nothing but nerves, because that sounds like a kind of materialism. We have to understand that we don't know, as it were, what the nerves are in terms of some kind of material substance or mental substance. We can think of our nervous system simply as a pattern. Now, the important point to realize first is that all that we see in terms of an outside world, color, texture, shape, and so on, is going on inside our heads, going on inside our nervous system. So that when we, say, touch something and feel that it's hard, what we are actually experiencing is not so much the outside thing. It's true, the stimulus is coming from the outside world to our body. But what we actually feel and experience as hardness is a particular activity or process going on inside our nervous system. So that we could say all that our experience of the external world is felt directly only as an experience of the nervous system. And even that, in a way, is not quite correct, because when I say an experience of the nervous system, that what we are experiencing is a state of our nervous system, this still isn't a simple enough way of talking about it, because it sounds again as if there were, behind the nervous system itself, an experiencer. What we have to try and get clear is that our sensations are processes in the nervous system, and that those processes are us. The self is the process of sensation. In other words, there isn't a sensor behind sensation. When we have a sensation, we don't have it, we are it. And so it helps then if, first of all, we could think of the nervous system as being a pure pattern, something like the one I'm going to draw. I'm going to draw a pattern in 4 stages of its movement. So let's think of these as 4 positions in the movement of a kind of dancing pattern. The first, the second, the third, and the fourth. I've drawn them all out in a row, but one would see them just as one pattern constantly shifting around. Now, our nervous system has in it a peculiar capacity, which is illustrated in these particular drawings by the fact that if you look closely, you'll notice that the preceding pattern is represented in the following one by a pattern like it, which, as it were, represents the former state of the pattern. In other words, the former state of this pattern was this. And so, to record that former state, it has this in it. And then as we shift along, the whole pattern changes to this shape. We find inside a sub-pattern or subsection of the pattern, which is representing this one. And of course, it represents the first one as well. And so when we finally come over here and the pattern has shifted to this shape, here is a pattern inside it which represents this pattern. And so this ability of a pattern to contain elements which represent its former states is what we call memory. In engineering language, we would call it feedback, because feedback is the system whereby any system of energy is enabled to record the results of its own action, so that upon that record it can, as it were, make plans for the future. It can, in other words, correct its action. And so because human beings have memory, the capacity of the pattern of the nervous system to record its former states, the human being can make predictions about the future, and so, in general, control its activity.